Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here, to see so many familiar faces, to see so many students from Oberlin and Hampton. Thank you all for coming. This is so wonderful. There's nothing like doing something at home in a yard. Distinguished panel, Dr. Orville Taylor, Dr. Davies, Dr. Longsworth, Senor Kahar Grimas, Anne-Marie Bonner, head of the Institute of Jamaica, and above all, Mrs. Winsome Hudson, whom I want to thank for giving me this opportunity, for inviting me to present this talk today. I'm really honored, and thank you all very much. The book is there. I hope it will be in the libraries. So I'm going to talk in very, very general terms, and I hope there'll be time for questions. But if there aren't, then look in the book. My talk is Colored Man and the Panama Experience, because I thought I'd give you some sort of background about the connection between Jamaica and Panama, since this is a connection that is being talked about so much today. The years 1850 to 1920 saw a virtual stampede from the islands of the West Indies to the Isthmus of Panama. What has been described as a demographic tidal wave peaked during the construction of the Panama Canal, which was from 1904 to 1914, when an estimated 150,000 to 200,000 West Indian men, women, and children poured into Colon. Eventually, Panama would become what I call a mothership, from which the poverty-stricken islanders launched themselves to other destinations as work beckoned: Costa Rica, Ecuador, Honduras, Mexico, Peru, and then on to Cuba and the United States itself. The main event was the construction of the US Panama Canal, that is 1904 to 1914. But two previous episodes in the 19th century had already established a Jamaican presence on the isthmus and a pattern of migration driven by proximity. Kingston, after all, is only 550 miles from Colon. The first large-scale migration of Jamaicans overseas was not of the building of the canal, but of the building of the Panama Railroad from 1850 to 1855. The second was a failed attempt by the French, led by de Lesseps, to dig a Panama Canal in the years 1880 to 1888. The West Indian builders of the US Panama Canal then might be seen as represented the third and by far the largest generation in the narrative of the Panama experience. The emigration of so many young men in these years was to be the most effective birth control device of the times. Birth rates in the British colonies falling dramatically or rising on the currents of departure and return. But other effects were to be more dramatic and long-lasting and contributed to the social, economic, and political transformation of these islands in the 20th century. The greatest impact fell on the islands of Jamaica and Barbados, from which the greatest outflows came. But no port or village in the smallest island remained untouched. In fact, I think something like 10% of the population of St. Lucia went, for instance. Most of the departures would be of poor black males and later females in search of employment, but it seems as if everyone went. Teachers, doctors, ministers of religion, entertainers, merchants, traders, photographers, all traveled to provide services to their countrymen and women, and also to better themselves. Going to Colon became a style, and Colored Man, or Panama Man, as he was known in Barbados, became the iconic image back home, satirized or glorified as part of the West Indian epic. Amazingly, although virtually every West Indian today at home or in the diaspora will acknowledge some echo of Panama in his or her family history, virtually nothing is known in the islands or elsewhere of the events that brought about seismic change in the islands. Nor is there awareness of the part played by their antecedents in the building up of the countries to which these early immigrants went. Many outsiders do not even associate the West Indies with the construction of the Panama Canal, although West Indian workers supplied at least 2/3 of the workforce at any given point in time. The Panama Canal could not have been built without them, and descendants of these immigrant workers who remained have played a major role in the development of the Republic of Panama. Like everyone else, I remained ignorant of these facts, although I too grew up with family who had gone to Panama. I knew nothing of what they had done there, and the name Panama evoked only fragmentary images. Indeed, what stayed in my mind, and what still is for most of us the most evocative reference to the Panama experience, is the song Colored Man, as Orville Taylor reminded us. That is, we all know it. 1, 2, 3, 4, colored man a come, with him watch chain a lick him belly, bam, bam, bam. Ask him for the time, and he look upon the sun, with him watch chain a lick him belly, bam, bam, bam. Like many images before and since, the image in this song is one of ridicule, satirizing a figure who has in many ways remained familiar. Witness the bling generation of the 1980s and 90s, returning with cargoes of gold jewelry and gold teeth. Today, it is the fake American accent of the returnee, when in the past, a characteristic was the ability to chop language with fake Spanish, embellishing the sentences. As Amy's son does it in Louise Bennett's poem of the same name, in a later incarnation of Colored Man. This time, I suspect of those Jamaicans who emigrated in the 1940s to build a third set of locks on the Panama Canal. And I'll just quote a little of Amy's son. Him bring back walking stick and watch with gold chain bout so long. Him bring back bed, him bring gold teeth, him bring back Spanish twang. As him always drive in Spanish, Jamaica drive feel strange. So him said to me, Chiquita, what muchos grandos change. Returnees from Panama were first called colored men after the Caribbean port city of that name where the boats landed. Founded by the builders of the Panama Railroad in the 1850s, the clapboard town hastily slapped together was at first given the American name Aspinwall, but the Spanish name Colon prevailed and became official in 1890. By this time, the second wave of Jamaicans had arrived for the attempt by the French to cut a canal. People who went to Panama at this time became so identified with Colon, they were called the Colon people. And so many of them flooded into the city and replicated life back home that by 1884, Colon was being called the new Jamaica. During the height of the French construction years in the 1880s, Jamaicans literally fought to get onto ships making the Colon run, where they were packed like sardines on the open decks of the larger vessels, exposed to wind and weather for the trip across the Caribbean Sea, or on small schooners and fishing smacks borne along by the trade winds. Although the statistics of the times must be used with caution, at least 84,000 Jamaicans traveled in the 1890s during the French construction years. What beckoned then as later was not just adventure, but the opportunity to make a living that was unobtainable at home. When some made a success of it, they returned home to show it off. From the start, the elite views these colored men with scorn and alarm, as they recognized that the control they had over ordinary Jamaicans was already slipping away. At the height of the emigration in 1883, a newspaper complained, "Men are to be seen in the different parishes who never wore a whole pair of breeches or knew a pair of boots, strolling fully dressed, with an umbrella, a gold brass or plated chain, a brass or silver watch, rings to give away, and a nucleus of cash in $5 gold pieces in their possession." And at sight of these irresistible inducements, away flock cane hole diggers, woodcutters, trenchmen, wainmen, all able hands to the El Dorado. Colored man's visibility was magnified during the US construction of the Panama Canal, the peak period of the migration, which attracted huge numbers, many of whom, like their predecessors, traveled back and forth. I mean, the trip back and forth was like jumping on a country bus and going to Jamaica and back. Some 90,000 Jamaicans left in the years 1905 to 1915, and 45,000 Barbadians in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. By the time the Panama Canal construction was in full gear, every village or district the length and breadth of the islands would end up with at least one colored man. After the First World War, he was joined by the ex-soldier who had also traveled overseas. It was a romance of being a traveled man that set them apart and gave them heroic status in their own eyes and among some of their peers who had not traveled. Witness Claude McKay's tactile in his novel Banana Bottom, the epitome of the colored man. Quote, proudly wearing his decorations from Panama, gold watch and chain of 3 strands, and a foreign gold coin attached to it as large as a florin, a gold stick pin with a huge blue stone, and 5 gold rings flashing from his fingers. He had on a fine bottle green tweed suit with a well-creased and deep-tuned pantaloons called peg top, the coat of long points and lapels known as American style. And wherever he went, he was accompanied by an admiring gang. No less striking to the beholder was the appearance still later in time of another, now more famous returning emigre from Cuba, Panama, or New York, Alexander Bustamante, Jamaica's most flamboyant populist leader and first prime minister at independence, who was, of course, a traveled man. Alex Clark, as he was then, had been a rather wild and disheveled young man when he left home. But as his cousin and political rival Norman Malley recalled from a visit from him around 1923, he returned, quote, such a dandy. Oh, dressed with the most immaculate care, with all the airs and graces of a Cuban grandee. His ties matched the handkerchief in his pocket, and that matched his socks. His hair was pomaded, and he was full of airs and graces. He was real la-di-da. Popular culture also revealed another side to colored man, the man who returned with nothing and was equally an object of ridicule, as in this song from US Panama Canal days. Come from Colon with him big empty trunk, not a boot to him foot, not a thing to him front. Rub him down in his Santa P, give him a rum, can't even buy a coffee. Don't ask me what half of that means, because I don't know. A major element of the popular image of colored man was his attraction to women, at least when he brought something home. In Barbados, the Panama man spelled out in full the scorn and rejection when he brought nothing. Oh, the Panama man ain't got no money, still the Panama man want love. And the chorus goes, but he can't get me without the money to buy me a taffeta dress. If the Panama man going court with me, he going to treat me like a queen. And another verse says, look, the Panama man come home from sea as skinny as a church rat. All he had in his grip for me was a wide-brimmed Panama hat. Whether in song, fiction, newspaper, or official accounts, colored man is repeatedly presented to us as a stereotype with a predictable style of dressing, of walking, talking, and behaving